If there's one thing in Pokemon games that is almost as fun to find as the Pokemon themselves, it's Easter eggs and secrets. This is true for all video games, but the Pokemon games in particular have some great ones, which is why in today's video, we're going to be covering one Easter egg/secret from every main series Pokemon game that you very well might not know. This, unfortunately, does not include Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, however, because those games aren't out yet, but I will definitely be covering them plenty when they release, so be sure to subscribe for that, and with that said, let's get into it. Hey, so if you enjoy my content here on YouTube, first of all, thank you so much. But if that is the case, you might also enjoy my Pokemon remixes over on Spotify as well. I just released the limited original soundtrack for my Pokemon Cardinal series onto those platforms, and there is of course tons of great remixes to enjoy as well, and listening also directly supports the channel, so be sure to check it out if you are able to, and thank you so much if you already do. Okay, let's officially get into these Easter eggs and secrets. Going in chronological order, we obviously begin with Pokemon Red and Blue, and I have got a good one here. The design of the iconic Kanto gym leader, Lieutenant Surge, is very likely inspired by Guile or Guile, I'm not sure, from Street Fighter, given their near identical appearance to each other, especially when looking at Surge's design from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Additionally, given that Guile's first appearance came in Street Fighter II: The World Warrior, which released in 1991, which was just after Pokemon Red and Blue began development, the timeline for this to actually be a possibility is also literally just perfect, which makes it all the more likely. Moving on to Pokemon Yellow, this Easter egg isn't actually exclusive to Yellow specifically, but it is really cool. The SS Anne, which is the iconic cruise ship that you get to take a ride on in Vermilion City, actually gets its name from Pulseman, which is another game that Game Freak developed prior to Pokemon for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. In Japanese and in the anime, the SS Anne is known as the Saint Anne, which is also the name of a computer in Pulseman, helping to connect the Pokemon series with some of Game Freak's previous work. Now we're on to Pokemon Gold and Silver, and one of the most popular and iconic Pokemon from these games is Celebi. Celebi has the ability to time travel, which is just really cool in general, but it's very possible that there is much more to this ability than just its cool concept. It could be the case that Celebi's ability to time travel was inspired by the themes of the Generation 2 games themselves. In Gold and Silver, we saw the introduction of a real-time clock, a day and night cycle, the passage of actual time from the first games as Gold and Silver take place 3 years after Red and Blue, and the past versus future dynamic that Kanto and Johto have with each other as a pair, with Johto being very historical in nature, while Kanto is very technologically advanced. With all these major elements of the games sharing a concept of time, it's possible that this is where Celebi got its time travel capabilities, either as simple inspiration or as a symbolic representation of the generation as a whole. When it comes to Gen 2's enhanced version, Pokemon Crystal, its secret actually has to do with something that wasn't discovered until almost 20 years after its release. Around 2019, it was discovered that the Australian version of Pokemon Crystal is actually slightly different to other English versions of the game, as it makes some changes to NPC dialogue in both of the game corners. These dialogue changes attempt to subdue some of the more illicit references to gambling within the other English versions, replacing these utterances with dialogue that is laughably duller by comparison. Of course, Pokémon would eventually have to further censor and then eventually remove altogether the game corners in future games, but this little change occurred before any of that really started to become an issue, but it wasn't noticed until just a few years ago. Next, we move into the third generation with Ruby and Sapphire, and the secret here is actually something that connects back to Gen 1. You might already be aware of how some of Gen 1's Pokémon received slight updates to their designs after the game's release, meaning that these designs only existed for a short time before they were updated to what we know now. However, in Ruby and Sapphire, some of these original Gen 1 designs made a return, such as with Machamp and its lack of its championship belt, or with Nidoqueen and how it had fangs. This was even planned with one of the more well-known Pokémon in this category, which is Venomoth. In early Gen 1, Venomoth famously had yellow spots on its wings that were removed later on, but despite being removed and not even appearing on Venomoth at all in the Gen 2 games, they were evidently planned to make a return, as according to cut content website The Cutting Room Floor, the data for Venomoth's color palette in the games includes the yellow color that its spots would have had. It ultimately doesn't have these spots in the final release, which indicates that while it was most likely planned, Game Freak probably changed their minds at the last second. In Pokémon Emerald, the signature edition coming off of Ruby and Sapphire was, of course, the Battle Frontier, and there is an interesting oddity that occurs in this area. Within the Battle Pike, you can encounter a gentleman whose Dusclops will attack you as soon as you enter the room, but there's actually a hidden piece of dialogue in this exchange that can be triggered by the player themselves. If the player simply lets the cutscene play out, the gentleman will only tell you to watch out, but if the player presses A or B while Dusclops is attacking, it will trigger a third line of dialogue where the gentleman tells Dusclops to stop, which, given the minuscule nature of this event, is a curious thing to have unlocked by player input. Now we come to our first remakes of the video, Fire Red and Leaf Green. These games contain a fun Easter egg to the originals and the mania that surrounded them, which can be found in Vermilion City. At the SSN dock, the infamous truck can still be found here, and if the player looks under the truck by pressing A while facing it, they will find a lava cookie. This is a well-known reference to the Mew under the truck rumor that was spread all over the place and was very well known at the time. But what is less well known is that the inclusion of the truck in the remakes itself is also a little bit of an Easter egg to the earliest days of the franchise, even as far back as when it was known as Capsule Monsters. Basically, the infamous truck from Red and Blue was actually most likely just a leftover from a scrapped town that was discovered in the leaked source code of Pokémon Blue, which was leaked a couple of years ago. This town existed during the game's early development, when the game's graphics looked much different stylistically, yet the truck in its exact form somehow made it into the final games. All of this indicates that its inclusion was likely not intentional, meaning that it definitely would not have been in Fire Red and Leaf Green either if it hadn't been for the popularity of that Mew under the truck rumor. Getting into Generation 4, we have a really cool one with Diamond and Pearl. One of the most curious elements of these games is the cathedral in Hearthome City. Many people have wondered what the meaning of this building could be, given its very significant feeling nature, but in reality, this building is actually now a reference to Pokemon Legends Arceus, even though it existed over 15 years before Legends Arceus even released. This is because, even though it's not something that's made very well known, this building actually does have an official name, and that name is the Foreign Building, or in Japanese, the Foreign Culture Building. With the knowledge of Sinnoh's past that we now have thanks to Legends Arceus, we can now say that this building was effectively built in honor of the residents of Jubilife Village who founded the region, as they literally all came to Sinnoh from foreign lands when they settled the region. In fact, the painting that is seen front and center within the building is actually implied to have been painted by Sanqua in Legends Arceus. I brought this up in another video and speculated that it was possibly something else. I was wrong, I'll take my L, but yeah, with that and the name of this building, this is definitely the painting that Sanqua painted, meaning that collectively this is technically a Legends Arceus Easter egg that existed before Legends Arceus, which is pretty freaking cool. For Pokemon Platinum, its secret actually has to do with its name specifically. Platinum is a name that is likely very intentional, as well as symbolic, seeing as how Pokemon Platinum, with the exception of the Johto remakes, is the last game that was released within the Japan era of Pokemon. In the first 4 generations, all of the Pokemon games took place in regions based on Japan, and I have discussed in the past how this ties them together as a sort of saga, if you will, which may have possibly been intentional by the developers themselves. With that in mind, naming the last new entry in this series Platinum, which is basically the top of the mountain as far as precious metals and their values are concerned, was likely intentional, as this game was possibly meant to be the climactic finale of this original saga of Pokemon. And that makes the idea that Gens 1 through 4 were supposed to be their own cohesive saga all the more likely. And speaking of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, on Route 41 in these games, you will come across a swimmer by the name of Susie. After defeating her, she makes a comment about a hit song that features a boy riding on a Lapras, which is likely a reference to the original Pokemon anime opening, whose theme is not only a bop, but also showcases Ash riding on his Lapras. Okay, we have officially made it to Gen 5, and I've got a cool one for you guys about Pokemon Black and White. So, one fact about the Unova games is that the cities and towns in these titles are all named after various types of clouds. However, this goes a bit further than just the town names, as the slogan of some of the towns actually tie into the names themselves. For instance, the slogan of Nacrene City is "A Pearl of a Place," and Nacrene City gets its name from nacreous clouds, which in turn get their name from nacre, which is another name for mother of pearl, which is the material that actual pearls are comprised of. Another town that also does this is Undula Town. Its slogan is "A town of rippling waves," and it gets its name from undulatus clouds, which are also known as wave clouds due to their wavy nature. In Black 2 and White 2, some new towns and cities were added to Unova's offerings, such as Burbank City. Just north of Burbank City is Pokestar Studios, and the two of these locations together are one big homage to the west coast of the United States. In Japanese, Pokestar Studios is known as Pokewood, which clearly comes from Hollywood given that it's a movie studio. As such, Burbank City is a clear nod to the city of Burbank, California, which is located nearby Hollywood and is also a city that houses several movie-making studios. However, what I believe is the coolest part of this whole reference to the west coast of the US comes in the location of Burbank and PokeStar Studios specifically. They can be found on the southwest edge of Univa's map, which is exactly where Hollywood and Burbank sit in real life, both within California and the entire United States as well, which just makes for a really nice attention to detail within this Easter egg. Sadly though, that is all that Gen 5 has to offer, so now we're on to Generation 6, starting first with Pokémon X and Y. Simply put, the NPCs in Pokémon X and Y do a lot of cool stuff that are really nice attentions to detail for something as relatively insignificant as an NPC. For example, many of the members of the Roller Skater Trainer class have names which allude to their roller skating hobby, like Dash, Kate, Roland, and Rinka. The Tourist Trainer class, meanwhile, was also given a lot of attention to detail as well, as they consist of Asian trainers, which reflects Kalos as a European-based region outside of many of the other regions that are Japan-based. For good measure, all of their Pokemon also come from one of the Japanese-based regions as well. There's even a double battle variant of this class known as the Honeymooners, and they use Combee and Vespiquen because they're Honeymooners. It's genius. Moving along though, there are even trainer classes that are directly related to each other and are younger and or older versions of themselves. For example, in X and Y, the Pokemon Rangers, both male and female, are younger versions of the veterans from the same game. And it's even possible that the female Ranger takes this even further, as the lass in these games looks very similar to both of these two, as does the preschooler, potentially representing an entire life cycle of a female Colossian trainer, which is absolutely wild. This also happens with the Rising Stars trainer class as well, as they eventually grow up to become Sky Trainers. In the games, the female Sky Trainer is different to the female Rising Star, but a female Sky Trainer from the anime heavily resembles the Rising Star from the games, which helps to keep this connection consistent. The remakes of this generation, however, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, have an interesting quirk to them as well, as no matter what, the very first wild Pokemon that you encounter on Route 101, just outside of Little Root Town, is always going to be a level 3 Wurmple, which will always appear after taking 3 steps within a patch of tall grass. And from Gen 6 to Gen 7, Pokemon Sun and Moon were lucky enough to release on Pokemon's 20th anniversary year in 2016. Taking place in the Hawaii-based region of Alola, this might have not been a coincidence for the 20th anniversary, or if it is, it's a really cool one, as Hawaii is also known as the Rainbow State, and we of course all know that the original Pokemon games, as well as multiple others, are all named after colors, which could possibly make this a subtle reference to both the original games and the 20th anniversary as well. The Ultra version of these games, Ultra Sun and Moon, are also a thing, but since they're almost completely identical to Sun and Moon, this next one can also be found in Sun and Moon as well, but it's still pretty cool. On Akala Island, the first city that you come to is Heiaheia City, and it's mentioned by an NPC in-game that it was founded by people from both Kanto and Johto. This is referenced in its Japanese name, Kantai City, as that name can be considered a portmanteau of Kanto and Kansai, which is the area of Japan that Johto, and Kanto for that matter, is based on. For good measure, it can also be translated to mean hospitality or a warm welcome, which is the theme of the city. Still within Generation 7, but not Alola, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were a surprise to everyone when they came out, and it was probably even more of a surprise when their beta got leaked a little while later. In this leak, it was actually revealed that the secret technique known as Light Up, which is a replacement for the HM Flash, was once known as Shine during development. The beta build that this was revealed in was dated May 12th of 2018, which was only a couple of weeks before the games were revealed and only about 6 months before they released, making it a rather late change. Okay, we have finally made it to Gen 8, and since we're not looking at Scarlet and Violet just yet, this is the current and most up-to-date generation that we're going to cover. It, of course, starts with Pokemon Sword and Shield, and the fact here is short and sweet. One of the more interesting towns in these games is Stow-N-Side, which is noteworthy due to it having a hyphenated name, a fact which I believe only it can claim when it comes to Pokemon. I remember thinking while playing these games that it seemed like an interesting choice for a town name, but it's actually very clever. The town itself is based on Stow-on-the-Wold, a town in England with an obviously similar name, with Stow-N-Side also incorporating Galar's theme of sports into its name as well, by using the term onside, which is a term used in multiple sports, including soccer, which is obviously very popular in the UK. So yeah, like I said, Stow-N-Side might look and sound like a weird name, but it's actually pretty clever, which is why it's always worth looking into these kinds of things, so you can properly appreciate them and know where they're coming from. Since Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are very faithful remakes, the secret for them isn't exactly going to be exclusive, as it can also be found in the original games, but it's kind of a crazy one nevertheless. In these games, you can go to a post-game area once you beat the main game, known as the Battle Zone. This is an area off the coast of mainland Sinnoh, and it is based on the real-world island of Sakhalin. The crazy thing about this is that it's likely the case that this area is named the Battle Zone because, in addition to the in-game island playing host to a lot of strong trainers, the real-world island that it is based on has historically been fought over repeatedly by Japan and Russia, sometimes even involving military conflict. That is kind of a wild thing to draw inspiration from for the name of a location in a Pokemon game, and while it's obviously not a confirmed fact, it seems to line up a little too well to not be legit. And last but not least, we have arrived at Pokemon Legends Arceus. I have extensively covered the Easter eggs and secrets that exist within this game already, so why don't we take a look at something that's a little more on the outside of the game. Through data mining, it has been determined that the codename of Pokemon Legends Arceus was Hayabusa. This name most likely references the robotic spacecraft that was also named Hayabusa, which was developed in Japan and launched into space in the early 2000s. In turn, this name was likely used as a codename due to its spatial origins, which the Sinnoh games, including Legends Arceus, are also known for. Whew! Well, there you have it, everyone. One secret and/or Easter egg about every single main series Pokemon game so far that's actually out. What do you guys think about all these? Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, because it really does help, and subscribe for more content. With that said, I will be back very soon with another video, and until the next one, as always, thank you guys so much for watching this one. I love you all very much, and I will smell you guys later.